Hey guys, welcome back to Status Detail. This is Evan. I'm going to narrate this video for you guys. We're going to jump into this 40-hour detail we did on the Zl1 Camaro. It was an extremely expensive detail. The car was very, very dirty when it arrived, and it had some pretty amazingly bad sanding marks in it. This is not our typical video. This one's going to be pretty long, but based on some Instagram polls that our followers gave us, you guys seemingly wanted kind of an in-depth video, so we're going to walk you through that. And I think it'll be a nice escape from all the crazy stuff that's happening in the world. This can be your little 30-minute detail escape and kind of get lost in it and learn something. We're going to show you a lot of the products that we use. We're going to show you a lot of the process that we use. And just in general, you know, a lot of our customers, you drop your car off and then you pick your car up and you don't really realize or understand what's going on in the middle part of all of that. So this is kind of a video to guide you through what happens when your car is with Status Detail. It's going to show you, for the most part, the beginning, middle, and end process of getting your car done when you do a ceramic detail on it. And some of those details will range from 20 to 40 hours. So this is a good breakdown visually and with the narration of what happens during that process. Alright guys, so let's jump into it. So this is some video of the car when it was first dropped off to me. The car is very, very dirty, as you're going to see. So the car was driven around. This car, surprisingly, you know, it's on like pretty high performance summer tires, but the car is being driven almost every single day. And at the time of filming this and the time of drop off, it was routinely between, you know, 35 degrees to 50 degrees, but routinely in the like 35 to 40s. So I'm sure this car is a little scary to drive with tires like this and weather like that, but the owner, you know, makes it happen. He wants to enjoy his car. So the car has a little bit of salt on it. You know, it's winter in Chicago, and when you drive your car, even if it's not actively snowing outside, like that powdery dust, it gets on the car. Sometimes in the morning we get a little bit of humidity, and then that salt can mix with that humidity, and you get salt stains, even if you're not driving in wet conditions. On top of that, there's lots of matte on this car, and the matte got very dirty, and how we clean that is kind of a unique process, which we'll jump into. But the gist of that is you need to be very careful, and because you don't want to turn matte paint into gloss paint, and it's actually possible to do that. But yeah, so just the overall, this car was very, very dirty. We would never really do a waterless wash on a car like this if we can avoid it. If it was the dead of winter and it was 5 degrees and our hose was frozen and we didn't want to risk anything like bursting a pipe, yes, we would do a waterless wash. That's something we've done before, but that's like a last resort of a thing we would do for the safety of more like the building, to make sure we don't like break a pipe. But in the case of this car was dropped off on a day that was about 35 or 40 degrees, but the following day it was going to be like 55 degrees. So the day it was dropped off, we did all the interior detailing. We didn't really film any of that, but we did clean the interior the first day. And then the following day, when it was nice out, we used the hose, the pressure washer, the foam can, and the whole 9 yards, and we washed the car properly. We have a ton of video on that section, so you're going to see that shortly. But yeah, this is just an overview. You can see the exhaust here is, you know, real bad. So we started with washing the wheels first. That's how we always do it. You don't want to start with the paint first and then do the wheels, because you get into a tricky territory where you can have water drying on the paint, even in winter when it's cold. And then you get water spots and other aggravating things that we don't want to have to deal with later. We never want to chase our tail on cleaning things. So we're going to do the wheels first, and we're using Zl1 tire cleaner here. We like to call it Zl1 tire and wheel cleaner. We've talked a lot about that in the past, though the name can be a bit confusing, and Zl1 has even mentioned that the name of that product was originally going to be Zl1 tire and wheel cleaner, but they changed it to just wheel cleaner, or just tire cleaner. So we like to use this product as a completely touchless solution, but it's not always going to work perfectly for that. So you can see we sprayed that product on and then we rinsed it, and you're going to see on the bottom of the screen like a crazy amount of dirt is coming off this wheel, so it's clearly working, right? Look at all the black dirt coming off the bottom of the wheel. On the concrete too. But the bottom line is this wheel was not protected with any kind of wax or sealant prior to its cleaning, and this wheel was not it's not gloss, it's matte. It's a matte wheel, and matte wheels are gonna, like, dirt adheres to them differently. So because we have two things like that going against us, when we did that touchless application and we were finished rinsing, it was very obvious that the wheel still had dirt on it. So in this situation, you need to agitate, and sometimes you need to, and this is one of them. So that first wheel, we kind of did a test with just touchless, and then the second wheel, the passenger side wheel, we're going to agitate, and we're actually also going to use an IK foamer, which you're going to see in a second. So the process starts the same. You're going to spray the entire wheel down with Zl1 tire and wheel cleaner, but then here we go, we're going to spray an IK foamer as well. Here's why we're using the IK foamer. The IK foamer is going to mix with Zl1 tire cleaner to make a better cleaning formula than either or of those products just by themselves. If you keep an eye on the rubber on the tire, that's the best description of why we're doing that. See how all the rubber is starting to turn brown visually? It's because the two products are reacting together, and the foam is kind of holding Zl1 tire cleaner in place versus letting it drip off. That's why it's turning brown, because it's not dripping away. So it's like basically self-agitating versus me having to agitate with a brush. So it just makes a better clean. In this clip, you can kind of see that brown on the tires better. Also, the foam gives a lot of lubrication that Zl1 tire cleaner does not give on its own. Because this is a matte wheel, matte can kind of scratch just like any other paint. But when you start to, over time, scratch matte paint begins to get glossy. We don't want that. That's the whole point of a matte wheel. So the extra lubrication from the IK foamer is basically going to help lubricate the surface so we're not scratching it as bad. It's kind of inevitable to scratch wheels because there's so much contamination and so much dirt on the surface that you're just going to kind of scratch it every once in a while when you're using a brush to clean basically metal shavings off a wheel. So this is just the safest way to do it, but there is no, technically speaking, 100% safe way to clean a wheel, in my opinion, unless you do it completely touchless, and sometimes that full touchless method just isn't going to work. The other thing we're using here is wheel woolies. We used the middle-sized wheel woolly, and then we used the smallest wheel woolly to get behind the caliper. The largest wheel woolly just flat out doesn't work on this wheel. The rotors are ginormous, and so is the caliper, so they don't really fit. So we use the smallest ones, and then the brush we're using is just a detail brush we use. I would recommend you actually use the Detail Factory brush on the store if you wanted to use something like that. The brush that I was using was very inexpensive and will probably break soon, so I don't recommend that. That's from Amazon if you're curious, but like I said, I don't recommend you buy those. They will absolutely break over time. The Detail Factory brush is much, much higher quality. So after we rinse this wheel off, it's going to be very hard to tell this in the video, but the wheel was much cleaner. The passenger side wheel was much cleaner than the driver's side wheel after the full process of washing it with agitation and the IK foamer. We repeated that step on all four wheels. We didn't show the other wheels. So next step, now the wheels are clean, we can rinse. So we're going to rinse as much of that salt and as much as the dirt off the car. You saw there was a lot of standing dirt on the car. A lot of people are going to want to foam right away. The idea here is that if we can blow, this car has no wax or anything on it, but if we can blow most of the dirt off with a pressure washer, we're getting that dirt off, which means we don't have to contend with it later. I don't want to emulsify dirt with a foam cannon when I can eliminate the dirt completely by rinsing. So we rinsed the car first. Also on the door here, you can see like a weird residue trail when I rinse it on the passenger door. I don't understand what that is, but there's some kind of contamination or residue or something on the door there. I'm not sure if we get a great shot of it, but after we wash with agitation with soap and water on that door and we rinse at the end, that spot is completely gone. Just an interesting note of weird contamination or weird residue from something that rubbed on the car or was intentionally put on the car. I'm not really sure. It was kind of a weird thing to see, but it's just another example of sometimes you gotta agitate things with a wash pad to fix it. So we blow most of the dirt off in this step. This is another reason why a pressure washer is pretty essential. You can totally do this step with a hose, but a hose just won't be as effective. This bucket has a wash pad that is on the store. It's I forget the dimensions, but it's a fairly large wash pad. It's just a pad. It has no mitt. You don't want a mitt because a mitt has extra stitching in it that can scratch your paint. Outside of that, those brushes are very similar to the other brushes I had mentioned. They're a little better quality. We were testing them out. I kind of like them. But again, for the time being, I would still highly recommend the Detail Factory brush. They are more money than the ones I'm testing in that bucket, but unsurprisingly, the more expensive brush, the Detail Factory brush, is better. So that's the brush I would still recommend. If you want brushes like that, I'd recommend you have more than one. So you're going to want one for wheels, one for paint, and one for interior. That's how I'm set up right now. The soap in the foam cannon is CarPro Reset. You can see a second ago I shot CarPro Reset into the bucket. I did not put any soap in the bucket because that's just a waste of soap. You put the soap into the foam cannon and then you shoot the foam cannon into the bucket. Otherwise, you're putting like 1 to 2 ounces into the bucket and like 1 to 2 ounces into the foam cannon, and that's 4 ounces. So you're using double the soap for no reason. Don't do that. So foam the whole car down. By the time you get done foaming the car and get to the wash pad part, you will have let the paint and soap dwell for a few minutes. But dwell time is very important. Just shooting a car with foam and then jumping into it is kind of the wrong approach. The whole point is to let the foam work for you. You want the foam to start to kind of emulsify and loosen all the dirt, especially in the case of how dirty this car is and how much salt there was. So yeah, don't jump straight into your wash. The wash pad is very, very soft, and it's also pretty heavy because there's a pretty thick foam pad in the wash pad that absorbs a lot of water. As you can see in this video, I'm basically putting zero pressure on the wash pad. I'm putting almost zero downward pressure on the wash pad. I'm letting the weight of the wash pad do the washing for me. When you put a lot of downward pressure and you end up getting some dirt or a lot of dirt stuck in the wash pad, this is when we start to see the worst swirl marks and stuff that's really hard to polish out. If we put very little pressure and something happens where you scratch a car, it takes very little effort to polish it back out, which means in the future your paint correction will be less expensive, and in general your car will look less swirled for a longer period of time. So it's a very bad misconception that people think, to clean my car I need to use lots of pressure. You honestly need virtually no pressure at all, especially a car that's ceramic coated. The car we are currently washing has no protection on it, so it would be the worst case scenario. But even in that scenario, again, I'm barely putting any pressure on the car. You don't need pressure to remove stuff. Even when you're clay barring a car, you don't need a tremendous amount of pressure. That's not how that's over loving your car, right? That's you like really trying to passionately fix something, but it's really just you're causing more damage than you're causing in resolution. So this is the spot where that residue was. It's very difficult to see while we're washing it because it basically just doesn't show up on camera. But whatever agitation we're doing in this step right here is going to remove that weird mark. We didn't do anything special. We just used soap in a wash pad and it rinsed it away. Outside of that, one of the reasons I like this wash pad is because it's so large and the way that it kind of just works when you're working it across the paint. It's very, very easy to see what sections of the paint I have cleaned and what sections I have not cleaned. It's just kind of nice to know when you miss a spot. And then outside of that, here comes the brush I was mentioning. Again, I would use a Detail Factory brush here, but these are great. Any brush really that you have available to you, whether it's a Detail Factory brush, this kind of brush, or anything that you would think is safe on paint. Don't use toothbrushes or anything like that on your paint. It's too harsh. But yeah, wonderful for like the spots that you see us cleaning right now, because these kinds of things are a nightmare and they're very, very hard to do with your hands because they literally just hurt your hands after you do a grill for a long time. Not too long ago we did a Bentley, and that Bentley grill was like a nightmare to do. So having a good brush is nice. Also, like window trim, a lot of dirt can get stuck in window trim and around the glass. All of that stuff. There's there's some more of it in the window trim. These are really awesome spots to use brushes. The wash pad just doesn't get in there because there's a few millimeters down of just like a crevice, and you just can't get that with a wash pad. So those are nice things to be able to do when you're washing your car. Not necessarily something you're going to have to do every time you wash it, but the kind of wash that we're doing for this car in this scenario for something that's so expensive with so many hours being invested into it, we're gonna clean every aspect of the car that we can get to. Normally we would, try and rinse this car really, really well because I'm going to blow dry it. Because this car does not have the appropriate protection like wax or ceramic or anything on it currently, it's not really feasible to like air dry it. We did air dry it, but it didn't work, you know, as well as you would imagine, because you need wax on a car to air dry a car effectively. So it's not the end of the world if you don't get all the soap off in this step. We got, you know, 99% of it off, but the point is, this style of wash is very different than a maintenance wash on a car with ceramic. You're going to really want to rinse everything off really well. Also, the car will rinse more easily because it has protection on it, and it will blow dry easier because it has protection on it. When you don't have any protection, it's very difficult to rinse a car fully down, and it's also very difficult to dry a car fully down because water wants to sit very flat on the hood. You can actually see that right now on the matte part of the hood, but it's basically doing that on all the parts of the car, whether it's matte or not matte. To get back to that matte paint too, so when we were washing it with the wash pad, but we did this on the whole car, very gentle. You don't want to put a lot of force or anything like that when you're washing matte paint or touching matte paint. Matte paint is delicate, and matte paint is kind of like under a microscope. It's like wavy, and it's wavy because it absorbs light. So when matte paint absorbs light, it doesn't refract it back out to your eye, which makes it not look shiny. Shiny paint is smoother under a microscope, and when the light hits it, it lets the light refract back out, and that basically goes dry and you see gloss. So when you smooth out the waves of the surface of matte paint, you basically start to make it glossy, which is why you don't want to use wax. You don't want to use the wrong kind of ceramic when you're putting that on matte paint, or you can turn matte paint satin. And just in general, like, you don't want to rough it up, you don't want to polish it, you don't want to do anything that will basically level the surface on the microscopic level of the matte paint. So yeah, you got to be pretty careful when you're washing matte paint. It's not rocket science. It's just kind of like use your best judgment and be really gentle. But, you know, remember, you kind of want to be gentle on the entire car. You don't want to be really gentle on the matte and then like really harsh on the gloss. That's not the idea. So the car is done now at this stage for the wash, at least the initial section of the wash. You can see the car looks pretty good, right? Look, we're walking around this thing and it's like, man, it looks pretty shiny, it looks pretty clean, we got all that crazy dirt off. The wheels are looking good, the tires are looking a lot more like black versus like before they were brown and had lots of dirt on them. But what's, you know, pretty wild is in a minute we're gonna get through all this footage of what the car looks like when it's clean after the wash, and you're gonna see how completely unbelievably trashed the paint is, and it's just like really appalling. So, you know, this part of the video is kind of an explanation of like, it's really, really easy to see, you know, a detailer's work on Facebook or on Instagram or on YouTube, where a guy like does a wash and he walks around it. And it's like, wow, you know, that guy, he did a really serious wash on that car, and now it's super clean and really shiny. It's like, you know, if I had told you at this point I waxed it or something, you'd be like, yeah, it looks like you waxed it, look how shiny it is. But we didn't put anything on it. We used a soap that had no additives in it. All it did was basically strip everything off. And you're going to see in a second how bad the paint really is. So these kinds of things can be really deceiving. You have to be careful of like marketing and advertising of like, oh, look how good this will make your car look, because on camera with the right, you know, camera angles, your car can look amazing, but it really looks terrible with the right, you know, angles or when the car is in the sun. We washed all the door jambs, so the lower door jambs and upper door jambs, even the rubber door seals, all of that stuff got rinsed out and washed and dried. Lots of salt can get into those areas, and we don't want any corrosive stuff sitting in the car, because those are the spots other people miss. And that means when, you know, 5 months from now in the middle of summer, he's still going to have salt in there, and when the car gets wet, it's going to activate that corrosive nature of the salt. So you got to wash that stuff out. You can see now the inside of the car is pretty clean. The inside of the car was cleaned the day before, like I had mentioned. We didn't get it all the way perfect that first day, but we did get probably like 85% of the way perfect on the interior the first day. We just didn't want to lose a full day, so we did as much as we could. So the inside gets touched up more later. I don't believe we filmed that, but that was a good little glimpse of what the inside of the car looks like when it's relatively clean. There's lots of interesting surfaces on the inside of this car. There are Alcantara and leather, and of course just plastic and stuff like that. We'll talk a little more about that later in the video when we do the final look over of the interior of what we did to it. But that basically concluded the introduction of washing the car. So what comes next is going to be the polishing. But before we do that polishing, we're going to show you some video of how bad the paint was. All right, guys, so here is the shocking part of the video. So here are all the swirl marks in the car. Here you see a sanding mark. So you can see to the left here, that's like kind of a normal, swirl mark. The paint's pretty beat up there. And then we get further over and you see those really white hazy parts where the light gets almost completely blurred. That's a sanding mark. That is 100% what a sanding mark looks like. So again, over here, like, lots of scratches, very, very uniform. This is the back bumper. You can see very, very uniform for the most part, like circled swirls. There's other spots on the back bumper you're going to see that are just like obviously full scratches, but like that's a swirl mark right there. Those are all swirl marks. Lots of cars have that. It's not very complicated to fix that. Again, these are just swirl marks. The way we fix this is more important than how to fix it. How to fix it's pretty easy, but the way to fix it's more important. A lot of detailers are going to remove too much paint. That's why our process of paint correction is so important, and so much research and time has gone into our process, because if you just cut all the paint off, sure, you'll fix the problem, but you remove too much paint. I want to make sure that you guys have as much paint as possible left after the car. So here's one of the worst sanding marks on the passenger fender. So again, you guys know what swirl marks look like. So here's some swirl marks, right? Those are all swirl marks. And then look at that to the left. No, here it comes. There it is. Bam. Sanding mark. That is one giant sanding mark. It's really white, really hazy. Could you imagine, driving next to this car in the street and the sun hits it and you're like, oh my God, what happened to that thing? It looks like, it's been painted incorrectly. Like, it looks like something is clearly super, super wrong with that panel. But yeah, that's what a sanding mark looks like. We're going to see a few more of those as we walk around the car. There's another one. That's the lower passenger side back area of the car. That's a really bad sanding mark too. That one's really, really big. So here's some video from my cell phone of while we were polishing the car. This was the first stage of polish. The car got 3 steps. This was the first step. So you can see the right side of the hood. I'm sorry, that's the roof. The right side of the roof is looking pretty good. It's definitely not perfect because we're not done. But then you can see that giant haze mark. And that's where we stopped polishing, where it's like the right side is clear and black. The left side is like hazy white and scratched like crazy. Big difference. That's just from one step of polishing. Here's another shot of a sanding mark. And then here's a shot of a sanding mark that's been polished out. So again, this is the first step. 2 more refinement steps happened after that, but that was just the first step. So the first one was the sanding mark. The second shot was no more sanding mark, and everything looks pretty good, including the swirl marks. But this is not perfect yet, and this detail is going for perfection. So there was 2 refinement steps that followed that to get it even more perfect. We don't have video of that because this is the absolutely most intensive part of the detail, and it's really hard to film when I don't have backup, unfortunately. But here's what I snapped on the trunk. Same deal. There was sanding marks on the right side of this trunk. So what you're looking at right now had 2 or 3 large sanding marks, and the left side is unpolished and the right side is polished. So the sanding marks, you can actually kind of still see them if you really look hard. There's a little bit of haze left, but after the remaining 2 refinement steps, everything was perfect. Like 95% of the hard work was done in that first step for cutting. But like you can see, even with no light, that left side of the trunk is totally destroyed as far as paint goes, and the right side is looking pretty good. Even if we had just stopped right there and never refined, that looks pretty good. This is a part of the window trim. This is something we used a 3-inch polisher on. We have 6-inch pads, then we have 3-inch pads, 2-inch pads, and 1-inch pads. We also have rotary polishers and dual action polishers. We have a 6-inch backing plate dual action polisher, a 3-inch backing plate dual inch polisher, and then we have a 3-2 1-inch rotary polisher. That's like only rotary. Those don't oscillate or anything like that. So this car used basically almost every single one of those pads. This window area is just an example of a place we used a 3-inch dual action. We did all the refinement steps here. I think we actually technically show each refinement step in order. You can kind of see a good polish job is going to have what almost looks like perfect welds. Like when you see a good weld, it has like overlapping like motion to it. So you can see here, it looks like almost like a roll of quarters, like stacked on top of each other. That's just really good uniform polishing. That's kind of what you want to see. That makes the clarity in the paint the best. And then the result, when you do those 3 steps and you wipe all the polish away, is a really, really, really shiny part of the paint. So after all that gets done, the car gets wiped down with isopropyl alcohol. We use Car Pro Eraser. You can mix your own isopropyl alcohol and water and get a really good result. We just like Car Pro Eraser because it works for us. You can also use Gion Prep. We use both in the shop. It just kind of depends. It's like the flavor of the month. It depends what I like to use for that month. Currently, we're using a lot of Car Pro Eraser. So this is with the car completely finished. The interior is looking really good. So all of the fabric you see, fabric would mean Alcantara or carpeted areas, have like a fabric coating on them. Fabric coatings are really nice for a lot of different reasons. For the most part, they're going to prevent any stains or water from getting on the surface and screwing up the surface. So if a customer of this car were to spill water, for example, or spill like a Coke, it's just going to bead up on the Alcantara. Even though it's perforated in some spots, it will not go into that perforation. That leather ceramic and Alcantara ceramic stuff is very, very neat the way it kind of covers. It's breathable, but it won't let things seep in. As long as you get to it relatively quickly. So if you have like, a napkin in your hand or something, you could pick it up basically immediately and it's not going to seep in. These things are very, very popular with people who have family cars. So when we do like a 5 Series BMW or something, super go for the ceramic coatings on the interiors. They're an absolute no-brainer. If you have Alcantara anywhere in your car, including your seat, totally no-brainer. You should be doing some kind of fabric coating on the car. For the leather parts of the car, we also have leather coatings on, and then the plastic areas technically don't have any ceramic on them, but to be honest, you don't really need to coat your plastic ever. There's nothing that's going to get on your plastic that's that scary. The only time we would consider coating plastic would basically just be using the leather coating on the plastic, and it kind of helps fight germs, which is kind of a nice thing. But outside of that, you don't need to. It's better to disinfect your plastic than to have a coating on it if you're worried about germs. The nice thing about the fabric coatings, Alcantara coatings, and leather coatings is that they do help create a more germ-free environment, because it does make germs hard to stick to the surface, but it will not kill germs. It's a totally different thing. If you want to kill germs, you need to disinfect, and a coating won't do that. So you can see as we walk around the car, the paint is just unbelievably glossy now. There is a clear, noticeable difference from this paint that we're looking at now and the paint when we were finished washing. And that is because this car has been fully polished for, I don't know how many hours, but an unbelievably large amount of hours. At least about 2.5 days of polishing went into it. Like I said, I wish we could have filmed that more for you guys, but it's just such an intense, labor-intense process that it's hard to film that without kind of someone backing me up and recording while I work. The car received 3 steps of polishing, and then after that it received 2 different products on the paint for coating. So it has a base layer coating, and then it has a topper on top of that, including the exhaust is ceramic coated, and the plastics are ceramic coated, the matte paint is ceramic coated, and all the glass is ceramic coated, and the matte wheels are also ceramic coated, which means the next time this car gets washed, if they wanted to use Gion tire cleaner, you could touchlessly do that on the wheels and it would work, because now there's protection on them, so it's going to work better. Even though they're matte, it's still protected now. The protection's more important than matte versus gloss. But it's just really obvious that, this car is very shiny now. Like 60% probably of the gloss, or 70% of the gloss is coming from the polishing that we did, and then the remaining percentage of that comes from the ceramic. The ceramic makes it extremely glossy. But the prep work of what's going into that polishing stage is more important than the ceramic. For the most part, almost anyone who's a detailer who's, decent at what they can do can put ceramic on your car. So don't be amazed by oh, I want ceramic. You want a detailer who can do unbelievable prep work. The prep is more important than the ceramic. The ceramic's very important, but your ceramic is only as good as the prep. So if a person only did one stage, like that stage of polishing that I showed you guys, where I said there was 2 more steps to go, if they stop there in ceramic, the car will only look as good as that step where they stopped. If they don't go that far, or don't realize there's further to go, or don't understand that there's more refinement to do, or they don't understand that you can polish past that point and still be safe on the paint, like that's why polishing is such a crazy mad scientist kind of method. Like there's a lot to learn in that world. There's a lot for me to still learn in that world, but I do like to think that I am extremely, extremely good at polishing paint. And that step is the most crucial step of everything that we did. It's unfortunately the thing we filmed the least of, but it's because it's so labor intensive that it's so hard to film it. In the future, we'll probably try and do some videos for you guys that focus in on the polishing more, because it's kind of this cool art form. You know, it's really what it is. It's kind of an art form to get the paint this shiny, and that happens from the polishing. But yeah, the ceramic's really important. The ceramic comes after that step, and a lot of the gloss is coming from that too. The topper, the second layer, adds a lot of gloss to this car. This car has a 7-year ceramic coating on it. This car gets driven a decent amount, but I also suspect this customer will visit us and do his like annual or biannual maintenance washes with us. And if he does that, I'm very, very confident this car will get its 7-year coating durability. Ceramic's amazing. It's going to make taking care of this car very, very easy. And if we need to very, very, very lightly polish this car in like 3 years to kind of get some gloss back, it's not going to be a problem. It's going to be a very minor thing. We could always add the topper back on for a very small cost if we wanted to, just to keep the durability of the coating alive. Speaking of coatings, technically speaking, the rubber has a ceramic coating on it. That's a bit of a stretch, but it has Geon Tire on it, different than Geon Tire Cleaner. Geon Tire is a tire wet that does actually have a small percentage of ceramic in it, so it will bead water really well, and the durability is pretty well, but it won't last more than about a month. But it's a cool product. It has a great finish. It looks like a factory new tire to me. I hate tire shines that are, overly shiny. So a nice, like, matte satin finish with the characteristics of water beading is always really, really nice. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up this video. We're going to have some more videos coming out, so please, follow our page so you can catch some of that content. Keep an eye on our Instagram page. If you have an Instagram and you're into this kind of stuff, I really encourage you to follow our Instagram page. We do pretty engaging stories every day. On top of that, I'm always doing polls. I'm really interested in connecting with our followers, and I'm really interested in giving you guys the kind of content you want. That's why I do polls all the time, where I literally will ask you what you want. That's why this video was made so long, because we made a poll on Instagram and everyone told us they wanted a longer form video. Part of that was probably because some of you guys are kind of on like lockdown and quarantine and you don't know what to do with yourself, so you needed like a 30-minute video to escape. So I understand you're not always going to probably want 30-minute videos. But guys, it would mean the world to me if you can give us a like on this video if you enjoyed it, to give us a follow if you want more of our content, and more importantly, kind of like share the love. If this is something you think is interesting and you have friends that have cool cars, that are into the car world and car care, share this video with someone. I really want to connect with you guys. I really want to help get you guys to use the right products and have really awesome car care practices and methods. That's really important to me. I care way less about the store's sales. Like, our store sales are not as important to me as someone DMing me and just saying like, hey, how do I do this or how do I do that? I had someone message me today asking about how to clean salt stains out of a car. I don't sell anything, to fix that. So I gave them like DIY information on how to fix that, because I'm not interested in the money. I'm just interested in helping you guys, really get really good value out of our content and our page. And sometimes that's going to mean that you get a lot of free stuff, and I'm totally okay with that. So I hope we can keep giving awesome value to you guys. We're going to keep making Instagram content, and we're going to keep making YouTube videos. It just takes us a little bit longer to turn the YouTube videos out. But there'll be a couple more coming over the next week or two. So definitely give us a follow so you can catch some of the new content. All right, guys, I'll catch you in the next one.